Mr. Feenstra is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Werfel, for being here today. In April, you and I had a great discussion about the modernization of the computer system at the IRS. We know that this is, significant challenges. I think 33% of your applications are still on a legacy system, and we continue to look at our create policy. I think of book tax and stuff like that are very complicated. So I just want to update a little bit. The IRS noted that removing sensitive systems to a cloud environment will allow IRS to better monitor and use user of access data. I'm just wondering, where are we at on moving to a cloud system? Can you extrapolate on that?
So there's two main systems that underlie the IRS infrastructure: the individual master file and the business master file. So that's where all the returns, when they come in, that's our transaction record. We're close on the individual master file. We are months away, I would say probably April, May, June timeframe, of moving it into a fully modern environment, which is the final step before it would go to the cloud. So it's kind of like on the to-do list to get it to the cloud. We have one more step. That'll make it cloud ready, and then it'll move to the cloud.
So you're prognosticating here. When could we be cloud-based, you think?
I want to get back to you on that. I know that the next key milestone is in the April-May timeframe. How long from that point to a cloud environment, I have to get back to you on that specific.
And I think about digitizing our data and going paperless on a lot of these things. Would that, once we go to cloud, could we then go paperless?
We're going paperless in concert with going to cloud, but yes, we have to still allow taxpayers the option to file on paper if they so choose, but we want to convert that into machine readable before it leaves our mailroom, and that's we're both purchasing the scanning equipment for that and updating our processes to make sure that we don't have paper anymore throughout the IRS.
Gotcha. So do you have metrics that we're trying to follow here, saying, all right, and you just sort of mentioned it, right? We're going A, B.
Yes.
I mean, that we're trying to meet these metrics as we move forward?
Yeah, we have the kind of what I call a critical path with our milestones. Absolutely.
Okay. Would you, can you commit to me and the committee that you can get us that information, maybe quarterly statistics on the progression of the various IT projects underway in the IRS? I mean, this is sort of the first time we're hearing where this is going, and I would love to know, all right, just, again, it's accountability. Hey, this is where we're at. This is where we're at this quarter, next quarter, and so forth. Can you?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Not only what path we're on to get to the cloud, but also as important, if not more important, what does that mean for taxpayers?
Yes.
What does it mean that we're on the cloud?
Correct.
There's a lot of benefits coming when we get there.
And there's going to be a lot of education. I mean, I think of all these online tax companies that are doing taxes as we speak right now. I mean, if it's online, I think we could be so much more efficient. I think it'd serve the customer so much more. That's why I'm pressing this issue. I just look at customer service in today's world. When you're on the cloud, there's so many benefits, and we see that in the private sector. And that's why I really push this. And just finally with that, I mean, what goes along with this, right? Once we get to a cloud-based system, then we can also do more with AI. We talked about that. I was talking about it earlier. Can you discuss how you're using more AI for assistance in enforcement, and what does that look forward? How can we look forward to using that when we get to a cloud system?
I'll start by saying we're being very careful with our deployment of AI, making sure that we're following the right ethics and ensuring that, as was mentioned earlier in this hearing, that no bias would be introduced. So we're doing it very methodically. Here's a couple of the key places where we're introducing AI. First, in our call center, so that we are kind of using, for example, chat bots, so that when you're asking a question, before you get to a live assister, they're using language recognition to answer your question. And then you resolve the question, and then they're done, and they're done more quickly. So that's one example. Also, in going back to this point of making sure that we're selecting the right cases for audit, there's very sophisticated modeling that uses advanced math, advanced data science, that means that we're more likely to pull a case where there's evasion versus not. That means the honest taxpayer doesn't get burdened, and that means the dishonest taxpayer gets accountability.
That sounds great. And again, I'm just pressuring as much as possible to modernize. I mean, this is, it should be 20 years in the coming that this all happens, and hopefully we can get it done in the next 12 months. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, thanks for being here. We're getting down to the lower dais, down to the last little bit. This is where the real work gets done.
It is.
And this is where we actually solve problems. And
We're just getting started.
yeah, just getting started. No, sincerely, I represent Ogden, Utah.
I know.
Right. Wonderfully strong workforce for the IRS. It's been, I've known it my whole life and have many colleagues and friends and everybody that have been there. I visited there as a member of Congress. I actually look at my time before Congress when I was a management consultant. And if I actually wish that I could be working on this project in that sphere instead of even in a congressional role, because to me it would be very simple. You have a bipartisan, strong agreement about modernization. And my colleague from Iowa just spoke a lot to it, so I won't rehash too much of it, but there's commitment there. And we should be doubling down, we should be tripling our efforts to make this happen. And at that point, we then assess what workforce needs are, right? And I opposed the Democrats' bill, IRA, that would have done a huge expansion. But then when we pulled it back, we wanted to keep the focus on the modernization piece. And then we reassess and we try to go about figuring out where the workforce needs to be. And that's the way I hope we can continue forward, finding the areas of common ground, because that's the only time you get anything done in this place is if there's common ground and we make moves in the right direction. My constituents, this is a pain point for them.
Yeah.
Your offices, we share the same federal building. When we reach out, we have an excellent relationship. So thank you again for that, and I echo what my friend from Georgia said. But this is an area we can actually improve on, and we need to double down on those efforts. So thanks for the comments you made on modernization and digitizing and getting this to that point. Members of this committee, have raised many important points on that. Can you discuss how the agency is truly prioritizing these initiatives? What is something you're immediately working on, something that you want to get accomplished that might be a few months to years down the road, but you could probably, we could maybe make it happen quicker if you get more collaboration from us. Concerned about the level of attention the IRS has placed on programs like the Direct E-File program, which was not authorized by Congress. Could you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, in terms of, we want to have big impact for taxpayers that benefit them. And so, I start with the call center. This is a place where there has been historic attention. I think a lot of taxpayers end up coming to the call center, hoping for a smooth and better experience. I think the call center certainly faltered in the 2022 tax season. And the changes we can make is not just about hiring additional phone assisters. It's about modernizing our call center, because you look at call centers in other industries and around and in other public sector organizations, there are both AI and technology solutions that can make the whole operation operate more smoothly. And then I go to our web tools. We have online accounts now where individuals and businesses can register and have their own personal account with the IRS. And so think about it in terms of what that account functionality is today versus your experience with your online bank account. And we have a gap. There are certain things you can do with the IRS online account, but not nearly as much as you can do with your favorite bank online account. And the goal is to close that gap. Now, that is not just about fixing the website. There's the entire technology infrastructure underneath that also has to enable a more modern experience for taxpayers. That's where the focus should be. I think there should be a bipartisan agreement that we want to lean in to give taxpayers the tools to make this entire taxpaying process easier.
Excellent. I agree, and I believe that motivation is there, and we need to double those efforts. Regarding the employee retention tax credit, you saw the tax package that this committee just came together on to pass in overwhelming fashion. Can you give me a sense? I've heard from a lot of small businesses that are anxiously awaiting for their ERTC claims to be processed. How is the IRS working with reputable tax preparers in the greater tax community to ensure that these ERTC payments continue to be processed, the legitimate ones, and everything? There's a big backlog here.
There is. I get this question a lot. Work with your taxpayer, the taxpayer advocate. If you have a hardship, we're working with the taxpayer advocate to try to prioritize our significant inventory to those that face the biggest hardships. It's an unfortunate situation. The promoters and the marketers that essentially tricked a lot of small businesses that weren't eligible into applying have clogged the system. And we're working through it. I mentioned we're coming up on nearly $1 billion in ERC issuances that have occurred since we announced the moratorium. And most of that is working with the taxpayer advocate and Congress and others to prioritize those that are the most urgent because they're hardship cases. That doesn't mean they're going to get approved, because sometimes we work on it, we realize you're actually not eligible. But we're focused on it, and we're making sure they get resolution.
I got a request earlier today, so I may even be calling in myself. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I don't believe the top dais would agree with your inaccurate statements earlier. Mr. Gomez?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Woolfolk. Thank you for being here today. I call the lower part of the dais, the part of the dais that's closest to the people. So, and I'm proud that we all here are fighting for our constituents. I want to talk about the child tax credit. In 2021, we saw child poverty cut by nearly half in a single year thanks to the child tax credit. By increasing the credit, making it fully refundable, and authorizing monthly payments, we use the tax code to deliver relief directly to American families. 3 million children were lifted out of poverty. But despite our policies giving working and middle-class Americans more money in their pockets, which all my Republican colleagues claim is their goal, every Republican Congress let these vital provisions expire. We did see some progress from Republicans last month when we passed a bipartisan package to strengthen the CTC. But ultimately, Republicans refused to support the provisions that have been proven to dramatically reduce child poverty. Provisions like increasing the maximum credit and ensuring full refundability to help kids and families who need the credit the most. But I want to focus on an equally important but often overlooked provision that made the CTC so effective: monthly checks. Parents know kids need diapers, formula, food, clothes, and they need it not once a year, but they need it every single day, every single week, and every single month. You can't pay down your child's hunger once at the end of each year. By giving families the money they are entitled to in monthly payments, we boosted monthly income and put their money back in their pockets. Making payments monthly instead of annual has the power to change the lives of working people all over the country. That sounds like something the Republicans should support if you listen to what they want from the tax code. Commissioner, given the progress made and lessons learned in 2021, does the IRS already have much of the infrastructure and knowledge to quickly roll out advanced payments of the child tax credit if Congress acts?
It certainly was a beneficial moment for us to re-engineer our systems, update our processes, and go through the effort and resolve it successfully. I like to say we now have the muscle memory and should be able to implement something like that easier than if we were trying it for the first time.
I appreciate that. And one of the things that I was informed about is that it also wouldn't cost that much. So it's something that I know would make a difference. You know, some people say it's only $250 to $500 or even $700 a month, but to working people, that is a lot of money that
Absolutely.
can make a difference when it comes to making basic ends meet. And then another aspect of making the child tax credit effective is ensuring that taxpayers claiming the credit are treated equitably. Last year, I wrote a letter requesting the IRS to further analyze and report existing data by race and gender to help us better understand how other historically marginalized communities may be impacted by racial disparities in audit selection. I appreciate your leadership announcing that the IRS is taking meaningful steps to address these disparities, especially for refundable credits like the EITC and the CTC. Commissioner, can you please update us on this work, including any information about the case selection practices driving these disparities and steps being taken to address the disparities I just mentioned?
Yes, the big takeaways you should have are the following. One, we are significantly reducing the number of EITC audits because audit volume was identified in the independent report as being one of the main drivers of disparate impact. Second, we have changed the case selection algorithm with an intent specifically to reduce the disparities that were existing in our case selection. We'll be able to report in the fall of 24 timeframe whether the changes that we made are having the intended impact of eliminating the disparity. Furthermore, we now want to work to make sure that we are constantly evaluating disparate impact in IRS operations, and we're working on the best way to do that. And in particular, it's often important to work with external stakeholders. This whole issue surfaced by an independent report. So partnering with various stakeholders who can evaluate the impact of IRS operations along with us is critical. So strengthening those partnerships is another part of the plan.
Thank you, Commissioner. When Chairman Neal established the racial economic equity working group when we were in the majority, it's an issue that we feel is important because if Americans feel like the tax system is fair, they're more likely to comply. So with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Ms. Malliotakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Thank you for your time here today. My colleagues have asked a wide range of questions and concerns, but today I really want to talk about the casework in my district office we're faced with on a regular basis. First, I want to commend your team of tax advocates. In particular, George Agite has worked very closely with my district office. He's a tremendous asset, does a fantastic job. And it is my understanding that the New York delegation has a total of 1,688 open cases with the IRS, 81 of those being from my office. The number one issue my office deals with, unfortunately, is stolen returns. I believe we have 14 current cases with the IRS totaling over $1 million in stolen returns, where criminals have removed and replaced the name and the address on the check. And theft is made easy by the envelopes that the Department of Treasury uses, making it blatantly obvious that there's a check inside. The issue worsens when the IRS does not allow those individuals to then opt for a direct deposit, so a new check gets issued, and we are in this kind of endless cycle, with one of my constituents having a check needed to be replaced 3 times. It is also my understanding that the IRS does not allow direct deposits for amounts over $20,000 or $25,000. So I understand that these thefts are not solely confined to IRS checks, but every check issued by the Department of Treasury. So I just had a few questions on how we can possibly work together to rectify this issue, and what is the theft in check? First, do you know the cost of what this is costing the United States taxpayers, the fact that these checks are being stolen?
I don't have a metric on that. I do think you have identified the right set of people to come together. Me, the head of the Bureau of Fiscal Service at Treasury that operates our payment platforms, either sends the checks or executes the direct deposit. And I do have a lot of motivation around these open cases. I mean, I've referenced it a few times. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights affords the taxpayer quick resolution. And if they're waiting and having to receive a check 3 times, then we're not meeting that responsibility.
On the issue of tackling the theft itself, are you working with the U.S. Postal Service to try to address this issue?
I'm not aware that we are, but I want to get back to you on that.
Okay. And since the issue is for all Treasury-issued checks, has anyone discussed the changing the envelope so it's not so obvious that there's a check inside?
It's as you're sitting here saying this, it's very intuitive, but I do want to check with the Bureau of Fiscal Service leadership on this.
What options do you think are available to constituents that are victims of this tax return theft other than getting a reissued paper check? And is revisiting the direct deposit issue, can you do that in terms of?
Yes, I want to look into why that is not currently feasible.
Yeah, it should be an option, certainly. If they had the first check stolen, they want to move to direct deposit, that should be an option. And then if you could look at the thresholds, if there is truly a cutoff at $20,000, $25,000, which I had not heard about prior. So, look, I really want to work with you on this issue.
Absolutely.
I really hope that you'll follow up your staff with my team so we can try to get to the bottom of this, and maybe there's a follow-up meeting that we can have with somebody from Treasury to really discuss this, because if it's $1 million that's being stolen from constituents in my district, there's 435 members, right? And so we that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So we want to try to get to the bottom of this, and unfortunately there are bad people in the world that are trying to take advantage of our constituents and the American taxpayer, and we've got to, I guess, modernize our system to keep up with this type of fraud.
It's the smart place to make investments. Where people are being victimized is the exact place where the government needs to step in and prevent and be helpful.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the ranking member. I'm reminded of that phrase, where you are now, I once was then, and I do appreciate the comments and the leadership that is behind me. Just want to say that because I'm number 25 on this dais here.
Yes.
I do want to talk a couple of issues, and I'm going to start with, because I think one is important to the future of our country, which is digital asset brokers. But then I also want to talk about what I think is preserving the history of our country. It's the conversation that you and I had the last time you were here, Commissioner, which is historic tax credits and historic preservation easements.
Yes.
So to give you just a minute to think about those things, I would also like to echo the comments from my colleague from Illinois as it relates to child support, because that October 24th deadline is looming, and would like our office will work with you on that. Also, like to follow up with. I heard my colleague from Georgia say that you were very helpful in some constituent cases that he had. I'll probably revisit you with that. So, with that, Commissioner, I trust you're familiar with the recent released proposed rule regarding tax reporting requirements for digital asset brokers.
Yes, I am.
So then you know that the rule is finalized as currently proposed. The IRS, by their own admissions, will receive an estimated 8 billion information returns from just this one rule. So to put that in perspective, for 2022, the IRS received 5.45 billion information returns total. With this new proposed rule, the amount of the reports the IRS will receive will increase by about 150%. We are talking about the amount of employees you have. Is the IRS equipped to handle this significant increase in the data?
And there's a lot of moving pieces on these issues. We've issued the proposed regulations. We've got hundreds of thousands of comments in that we're working through. I feel like we're at an inflection point in terms of digital currency and how to approach it along a lot of different perspectives of government, but in particular tax. We have to be prepared to, whatever the outcome of that regulatory process is, to have the technology and the process to execute those regulations fulsomely. So we will only propose in final regulations things that we have confidence we can execute on.
And I thank you for that. Personally, I support amending the rule to ensure that there is parity between the traditional finance industry. And I understand these rules go beyond the what traditional finance requires. If the rule did create a more level playing field between the two, the number of reportable transactions would decrease, freeing up IRS's time to focus on their current mission and not shifting all through the unnecessary data. Probably looks like I'm not going to get to historic preservation, but we'll follow up in written testimony on that. What timeline of implementing the recently released proposed rule regarding tax reporting requirements and assets for brokers do you think that it's a realistic time frame?
The challenge that I have is that it's really my counterparts at Treasury that I co-lead this with, and so I would want to make sure that we're aligned on the time frame. I think we got over 400,000 comments on the regulation, and so figuring out, this is a complicated issue, and we certainly don't want to get out in front before we've given those comments fair vetting. So I don't have a specific date for you, but I can work with Treasury to get you one.
And I'd appreciate that. Now, it's my understanding that there's a much shorter window for compliance than traditional finance brokers, and to comply when they were implementing this rule, for the traditional being 5 years, the digital asset exchanges only got 16 months. Is there any reason for that?
I don't, at my fingertips, have the full explanation and basis for it, but we will give you the underlying basis for that.
Well, and I appreciate that again, the Commissioner. Given this new industry, it's a new industry with new technologies and innovation, I would recommend that you reevaluate the timeline to give the stakeholders enough time to comply, just as the traditional financial market did. We are voting, and I will get back with you on the historic tax credits and historic preservation easements because they're very important to me. But I do appreciate your time, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
With that,